What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. We're here for another edition of our daily drop podcast series, and we're here to talk about Ven-Allen Lubin and his transfer to NC State. Obviously made waves when it happened a few days ago. It's been a major talking point amongst Carolina fans and amongst NC State fans. Let me throw this in there, AJ. I had this tweet that I put out towards the end of last season about Lubin, because he was a guy that had, one of Carolina's best players towards the end of the year. Really, I think, grew at his position at North Carolina, which is another unfortunate reason it all played out like it did, which we'll dive into in this podcast. But man, has that tweet been resurfaced by State fans? I mean, 3, 4, 5 days before this commitment.
What are they doing? I didn't see. What are they doing? Because
basically my
they
tweet
tend
was
to find old State and Virginia Tech fans tend to find old tweets.
Yeah, State fans are really good at it. But it was basically a tweet of Ven-Allen Lubin is going to be really fun to watch, next season for UNC. And it was, again, aligned with, how much better he was playing towards the end of the year and whatnot. And, State fans retweeting it or commenting on it and resurfacing it, kind of saying, basically saying, yeah, he's going to look good in an NC State uniform.
So they finally gave you credibility. They gave you no credibility probably at the moment you tweeted it.
Oh, no.
But suddenly now you have credibility.
Yeah, I
get it.
Man, the amount of State fans.
I covered State for a long time. I understand NC State fan.
Yeah, the amount of State fans in my mentions, I felt like I worked for Pac Prod or Corey Smith or something over here, man. They were just all up in my mentions. I was like, geez, Louise, guys, give it a rest. But
Corey Smith is synonymous with NC State. He is a passionate guy. I love his passion.
Yeah, passion is one way to put it for sure.
He's a good guy, too. Carolina fans don't like him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, they definitely don't like him. But yeah, I've never met the guy, but been around him a few times. Seems like a nice guy from what I've seen.
Perfect for NC State.
Yeah, that is, yes, 1,000%. I'm glad you said that. So we figured we kind of hop on a podcast.
Clarification. Corey's a good guy. I like Corey.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Again, I've never met him, but been around him. Seems like a nice guy. But just to kind of hit on what we're going to hit on in here, felt like it was an appropriate time to hop on a podcast and maybe talk about how this stuff kind of played out. Because, whenever he entered the portal, obviously, Ven-Allen Lubin kind of put that tweet out essentially saying that, I'm entering the portal, but, my full intention is to return to UNC, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, I think we did a podcast soon after that, or maybe it was a basketball show at that point. I don't remember, where we were kind of like, yeah, I don't know how necessarily true this is or the way in which it was framed, how much it was kind of based in reality because of the things we understood behind the scenes that were going on. But I do think, and we'll toss some of the numbers out here as well, I think when you understand the full context of the situation and understand some of the maybe reasoning that he decided to put his name in the portal in the first place, I think, I'm not going to say Carolina fans aren't going to blame him because he transferred to NC State and he's just like persona non grata now. I mean, you just don't talk about him anymore. But the full context, I think you can have a little bit of understanding of, okay, yeah, I can understand why someone might have entered the portal based on maybe the numbers he was making and then the numbers that were being thrown around to other guys that committed in this class in North Carolina. So yeah. I'll kick it over to you because I know you'll probably divulge some of that information, but let's start from the beginning with it. We'll go into the rest of it. But enters the portal, tweet comes out, I fully intend to come back to North Carolina. And then that's when I understand you kind of got some word on some of the numbers behind the scenes. So what can you tell us on how the situation kind of initially played out with Ven-Allen Lubin?
Well, we actually had it before he made that announcement. And I said on our boards, when he came out with that, I said he won't be back. Because I don't want to say he burned the bridge. That would probably be too harsh. But what he made it was sort of a power play on Carolina. And he said he wants to be back, or he intended on being back. People need to understand the word intend doesn't mean you are. I believe he used the word I intend on come back. But he wanted to try to elevate his deal. He wanted to increase his deal. He signed a deal that was reaffirmed in late March, early April after they got back from Milwaukee. And then Carolina went and he didn't have a problem with Vasar. A lot of people are saying, well, he wasn't going to play start in front of Vasar, so that's why he left. That had nothing to do with it. He was fine with Vasar. In fact, Ven-Allen Lubin thinks he can play the 4, and there was a lot of talk about that. And we talked about the high-low game with Lubin and Vasar. What it was when Jaron Stevenson came, the amount that Jaron got was significantly higher than what Ven had already agreed to and signed. And Ven's people are like, hey, wait a minute, look at your numbers and look at his. You should get his money. They need to give you more money. That's not cool. Of course, I think we did a podcast at the time about it. And I said, hey, if you're Juan Soto and you signed a $600 million contract with the Mets, and let's say for the sake of discussion, Shohei Ohtani became a free agent this year and he signed a $700 million deal, Soto can't complain about it. Mm-hmm. You signed the deal. It's your deal. So I think there was a little turnoff there because of how aggressively a new deal was pursued and the manner that it went about. I think Ven-Allen got some poor advice from his corner, and he went ahead and entered the portal, maybe thinking that Carolina would say, gosh, we need him, so let's tear it up and let's do a new one. But they had other spots to fill, and they needed that money for other spots. And quite frankly, if the trade-off is Ven-Allen Lubin for Jaron Stevenson, I think with what Hubert wants to do moving forward, they got the guy that they think fits better moving forward. I don't know if Jaron's a better player. Through his first 2 years and Ven's first 3 years, I would think Ven is a better player than Jaron, or has proven to be a better player on the court. Jaron has more upside. And I think Carolina was cashing in on the upside. They were cashing in on the length, he's 6'10", with a wingspan over 7 feet. They want that defensive presence. He can defend the three. Ven wasn't exactly a lockdown defender. He's I think he may have struggled defending a four at times, an athletic four, and obviously struggled defending big. So Carolina wasn't tugging at his pant leg when he walked out the door. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't say that to make NC State fans are going to come on here and say, oh, you're just making it cute. No, we don't. We don't care. Personally, I have nothing invested one way or the other in the outcome of these games and how Carolina plays. My job is to cover them and be perfectly fair. And you can go back to our message boards when this happened, and I said the same thing then. And I believe I said something on a podcast.
We did. I'm like 99% sure.
I'm pretty sure I did. I'm just giving more clarification. So Jaron Stevenson got more than double what Ven-Allen was getting.
Yeah, and that was what I was kind of alluding to, because we talked about this off camera as well when we first heard about these numbers being tossed around, and to kind of play devil's advocate and maybe sit on the side of the fence that Lubin's on. I remember telling you, like, I get it from his perspective in a way. I understand that he had signed the deal. I get that. I understand that when you do it, it's signed. You move on from it. But when a guy comes in. Not to mention, you haven't hit on this. I know there's other guys that Carolina brought in that were making, significantly more than, Lubin would be making. And I look at Lubin's.
But none of them averaged 3 points a game less.
Yeah, exactly. But I look at Lubin, I look at what he was able to do for North Carolina, kind of being one of Carolina's most important players toward the end of the season, maybe being its best returning player, at least statistically, how they finished the year last season. And then you bring in a guy like a Stevenson, who, I agree. I think the upside's there. I think he is a guy that maybe fits what Hubert's trying to do more than Lubin did. But the fact of the matter is, you bring a guy in Stevenson who, albeit in one less season in college, has not produced the numbers that Lubin was producing. And all of a sudden, he's making over double what you're making. So I can understand from a Lubin perspective 100%. And I think Carolina fans watching this can understand in this NIL climate that we currently live in, where that happens and you go knock on Hubert's door like, hey, man, like, I was one of your best players, last season. I want to come back, but you're bringing this guy in. He's making over double what I'm making. Like, I can understand where that would rub someone like him the right way. But on the other side, I think the way in which it played out with the tweet, especially of like, I fully intend on coming back. I don't think that was the correct way to go about it. But I don't blame him for sitting there and being like, hey, man, like, what's this about? You know what I mean? Because over double is.
I think there was some emotion
change, AJ. You know what I mean?
He wanted to come back. Like the thing about it is, he left Notre Dame after his first year. Mike Bray retired. He left Vanderbilt after second year. Stackhouse got fired. So he really liked it at Carolina. He got very comfortable late in the year. As you noted, he produced. He had a bunch of double doubles down the stretch. And he had all intentions on coming back. He liked it at UNC. And the deal, he signed a 2-year deal a year ago, and it was kind of reaffirmed early in the process. And that's kind of an example of how much NIL money changed from the spring of 24 to the spring of 25, because Jaron Stevenson, if he was on the market a year ago, would have gotten maybe half at most of what he got from Carolina. But everything skyrocketed. There was a tremendous uptick in the amount of money guys were getting previous to the year before. So Ven was sort of stuck in that. He's not the only one. A lot of other guys were too. And I'll tell you right now, the guys that came in got more than most of the guys. So Evans, Vasar, and Stevenson got more than what Seth's getting.
Yeah.
And Seth means a ton to the program. I mean, Carolina got a hometown discount, and that's the way it is. And Seth stayed. He didn't complain, and he's happy with what he has. So it's a deal that he signed. He didn't like the deal. He turned some people off and how his people wanted him to go about it. I think Ven's a pretty good guy, and unfortunately, he's going to be a dude that's going to talk to his kids about loyalty, and he plays at 4 schools in 4 years. But I'm not going to judge him for that, because some people will. It's going to be a hard thing to say someday. I hear that all the time from people. I should have said, I hear people saying that all the time. But the bottom line is he has a rare opportunity to cash in and get as much money as he can. So I get why guys are doing that. He'll play overseas. He's not going to play in the NBA. He'll play overseas and make good money. But if he can make an extra $300,000 or $400,000 now and stick whatever's left over after taxes into the bank and just let it sit there, it makes a lot of sense, because it makes the start of his real life post basketball a lot easier. So I understand why guys are doing that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think to reiterate it too, Carolina fans wouldn't obviously be as maybe up in arms about it as they are now if he would have transferred. You know, like let's say Kay Tyson went to a place like Minnesota. If Lubin transfers to Minnesota, I think people are like, yeah, well, that's an unfortunate loss. Would have loved to have him back, but you know, things played out like they did. But when you kind of go across town to a new regime at NC State, and I think Will Wade's done a fantastic job in the portal this offseason as well. That is a recipe from a Carolina fan perspective to kind of, like I said earlier, be a little bit public enemy number one. So the reception he receives next year when the teams play is going to be very interesting.
And stop the traitor talk. He's not a traitor. He had to make a decision that's best for him. I don't know what he's getting from State. I imagine he's getting more than Carolina was going to pay him. And I think your tweet is right. And I think State fans are wise to retweet it and get excited, because he's a good player and Carolina could use him. If Carolina had him added to the rest of the roster, I think the Tar Heels would be in really good shape, because I do think he could play some 4. He could also play 5. And I believe that he would be content if he's making the right amount of money in that role, because he probably wouldn't start next year. I would imagine Caleb Wilson's going to start at the 4. You don't bring in Caleb Wilson and not start him, as the great David Sisk has said about a half dozen times in the last few weeks. So Carolina would be a much more complete team if they had him. But it didn't work out. And I think right now, I wouldn't call him a traitor. It wasn't like he came to Carolina for 3 years and then went to NC State.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody called Dontrez Styles a traitor, because he had to make the best decision for himself. Mm-hmm. And he played 2 years at Carolina, went to Georgetown, then State. Maybe if Ven went somewhere else for a week and then went to State, I guess people would think it's okay. But stop the traitor stuff. He made a decision. Once he put his foot out the door, he had to find a new place. Mm-hmm. And NC State's a good place to go. I can see why a lot of guys would go there with Will Wade right now. I was watching that Will Wade video the other day. Carolina fans, wake up, man. Wolfpack are here now under Will Wade. They're going to be very good. So, and Ven doesn't have to go back to Chapel Hill. How about that?
Yeah,
for the first time since 1919. He won't have to hear it. And I'm kind of glad, because I don't think he would deserve the booze he would get. But that's just me, and I'm sort of an impartial guy here. So I don't feel the emotional response that Carolina fans have had. But I do understand the emotion, I think, that was in Ven's tweet when he went into the portal, because he was like wanting to go back. Mm-hmm. I want to come back, make this work for me, but it didn't. So he had to go find somewhere else. And it took a while. Last year, he committed to Carolina on May 23rd. This year, he commits to NC State on June or May 30th, maybe?
I think it was something like that.
Like that, yeah. So he takes his time, that's for sure.
Yeah, and again, and Carolina fans can't do this, because you at the end of the day, you are a fan. But I think the reason we wanted to hop on here is because you can understand some of the context behind it, maybe understand some of the numbers and and really the main reason in which he decided despite really wanting to come back to enter the portal. I think if you can kind of take your fandom and put it to the side for a second and put yourself in those shoes, especially a guy like Lubin, who you said is, more than likely, very likely not going to be an NBA player in the future, him taking care of his financial situation as much as he can now, I can't blame him for doing that, especially like we said, when another guy who's coming in, who's kind of produced less than you have, much less in a Carolina uniform.
And Carolina fan, be happy because he eliminates the possibility of a locker room issue because of money. And that's one of the things that coaches have stressed as one of their biggest concerns. It's not so much, sometimes it's coming up with money for certain guys, but then it's how do you deal with that dynamic when everybody knows? Mm-hmm. And everybody knows who I know what everybody's getting. So they all know what everybody's getting. There's no doubt about it. So you may have avoided a potential locker room issue down the road with Ven just leaving and finding a new place.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And in a perfect world, Lubin's on the roster still, and you got Stevenson, you got what you've got now, and you still have Lubin around. Again, I agree. I think that makes Carolina a lot. I think that makes them, especially in that front court, it really enhances what you got down there, because he's a guy that because of what we saw last year, particularly toward the end of the season, he's one of the few guys that would have been returning that you could actually kind of pencil in for something. Carolina just doesn't have that, as we've talked about. So yeah, in a perfect world, he's around, and Carolina's has him down there as well, but it's not how it worked out, and Carolina's going to have to work with what it's got right now. So yeah, just an interesting situation, not one you see every day, obviously, with a guy going straight from North Carolina to NC State, but I can understand if you're a Carolina fan why you'd be a little PO'd by him doing that. So
I get it. I get it, and State fans are thinking that they swiped someone from Carolina. So if they both want to have that emotion, that's great. That makes the rivalry better. Yeah. Go ahead and hate State for it, and State fans go ahead and gloat to Carolina. That just makes things better. The more venom, the more I like it. I'm a big fan of venom in rivalries.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's okay to hate people in sports.
And this basketball, the State side of this basketball rivalry needed to pick it up. So
yeah, it needed some juice for sure.
This is good for the area.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's definitely good for the area.
So now that I'm thinking through this, I'm glad Ven did this. I'm glad it worked out this way.
Yeah.
I hope it happens more often. Why not?
Yeah, it definitely stirs the pot, to say the least, around the triangle.
I hope Will Wade says something that just ruffles Carolina's feathers like there's no tomorrow.
It's good for the rivalry.
And Hubert gets asked about it, and he makes a mistake. Or Seth says something. Seth will say something. Seth gets asked about it in September, and he gets State fans all fired up because that clip, that photo of Seth getting into one of the State players' faces is circulating. So.
Yeah, it would be good for the rivalry, didn't it? So finger crossed we get some heated.
Stoke the fire.
Yeah, stoke it, man. It's good for the rivalry and good for sports in this area for sure. So yeah, we can wrap this one up. I've been Jacob Turney. He's been Andrew Jones. Get involved in the comments. I think the comment section is going to be very interesting to see what kind of what Carolina fans think and have to say about it. I know a lot's already been said on our message boards and on Twitter, but get involved in the comments. Like, now that maybe you understand some of the context behind it, does it change your opinion on the Lubin situation? Does it not change? Could you care less about money, and it's just the fact that he went from Carolina to NC State that kind of pisses you off? I can understand it from both perspectives. We want to hear from you guys.
Jacob, venom is fun for fans too, man.
Yeah, man, it definitely is. It makes it more interesting, to say the least. So, get involved in the comments. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell too, as always. See y'all next time. Thanks.